Mick Ennis joins us. 274 NRL games across many, many clubs, 8 Origin and a grand final win with the Sharks. Mate, as much as I'm a New South Wales fan, how the heck did we lose that game last night?
Yeah, mate, I mean, I must be feeling exactly the same. I sat there last night, I was really confident going into the game. Obviously on the back of that Game 2 performance, and obviously no Cameron Munster, and it was a huge blow for them. And then just the carnage and the intensity of that opening 10 minutes just didn't allow the game to settle at all. It probably wasn't until, I reckon about 10 minutes to go before half-time where it actually felt like the game had found a little bit of rhythm. It was just brutal. And obviously Queensland losing Selwyn Cobbo and Lindsay Collins was a big blow for them, which only made me think that we would, be able to come over the top of them, particularly when we got, I think it was 10-6 or 12-6. But, to their credit, Queensland, they found that try in half-time, which really proved a big moment in the game. And then in the second half, the kicking game of Ben Hunt in particular, and Daly Cherry Evans just completely suffocated New South Wales, and we came up with some pretty costly errors, and it just got worse, and Queensland grew, and the noise and the atmosphere of the cauldron got louder and louder and got the home side home, unfortunately.
Yeah, look, I want to ask you about that, just about, what the fans actually bring and how they help that team. Yeah. But what you're saying just before half-time, I think Blues had about 3 or 4 sets, and actually Lockie said it perfectly on the sideline. He said, look out, they're going to change the angle soon, we've got to be alert. And then Saifiti burst through. But I think that try before half-time, when they looked absolutely gassed, the Queenslanders, and then they scored that, what a boost for them to go into the dressing room, even though he missed the conversion. Yeah,
look, the challenge for both sides, given all the disruptions, probably more so for Queensland, was going to be physically how they were going to continue to hang on through the middle. And I felt like we were making some inroads. I thought Coruscant was enormous in keeping us really directed. When he went short to Jacob Saifiti, who was tremendous coming off the bench in that first half, I thought, here we go. There was some cracks starting to open up through there, and Origin, we talk about it every year. We've gone over years and years and moments of Origin moments. And, unfortunately, that moment where I think it was a minute and a half before half-time when Daniel Tupou knocked that ball on near the sideline proved a pretty significant moment in the game. And it's a shame because he'd been wonderful throughout the series. He really had been. And he still had some, really impressive moments last night, but you just don't see him make mistakes like that, and it proved to be a costly one. The kick from Grant down that short side, he jumped out to that left-hand side, pirouetted, came back, kicked, and got the ricochet off Blue-Eye's leg. But the put down from Capel was spectacular.
Well, he just wanted it, Mick, didn't he? I mean, you look at him, he's got 2 or 3 defenders there, mate. I mean, that's just a pure desire and heart getting to that first, isn't it?
Well, you look at their tries, the line from Valentine Holmes, the courageous, brave line that he ran off the short ball from Dearden, that put down that you just mentioned from Capel, and the desire to get there, and the one from Kalen Ponga where he busts through Talakai, he just wanted it. He just cut through there. And then, in the dying minute, 79th minute, a bloke who had played his absolute backside off for the whole contest brutally through the middle. A smaller man, Ben Hunt, comes out to put pressure on Cleary. When he people wouldn't have expected that. His teammates wouldn't have expected that. But it was a moment of just pure desire to get there and put pressure on him. And so, their 4 tries were remarkable, really, in terms of their effort and hunger and want to get to that try line.
Mick Ennis is with us. You've played a couple of deciders in Brisbane yourself. I want to ask you about that and all about the atmosphere. But just going right back to the beginning, mate, look, we've been debating in this country all week about yellow cards and red cards in rugby for head clashes, and some of them are accidental. The guy gets sent off, and then there's this bollocks about did you deliberately knock it on and things. Look, in that first stanza, you had a head clash right at the very start, and I thought that was accidental, but in rugby that'd get a card. I don't know, and Tino got put on report for the arm. I mean, that would have definitely been a card in rugby. A couple of questions here, Mick. First and foremost, you've got to protect the players. You know that, and looking after the upstairs, the bonds and things. But looking at the two codes, what gets away in one code and what doesn't get away in the other code, it just is bemusing.
Yeah, no, it is, and I think the NRL has done a tremendous job, in terms of where we've come as a sport in terms of the player welfare, in particular the high shots and those head injury assessments, and it was unfortunate last night that I think the first three were pretty much unavoidable in a collision sport. Particularly the Selwyn Cobbo one, where that was just he caught the hip of his own teammate when he went to go low in the tackle. The Lindsay Collins one was very similar. He caught, I think it was the forearm or the elbow, incidentally from Daniel Tupou. And the Cameron Murray one, well, it was just an unfortunate head clash, and it was just the sheer intensity in which the game was at, and the collisions were so intense and high at that point in time because of what was at stake. And yeah, it was just unfortunate. It really was. But the Tino one, I must say, I was surprised given what we've sort of seen in the game. I thought it was, if you look at the replay when they slowed it down, it certainly was a swinging arm on Matt Burton, and maybe the fact that Burton got back to his feet reasonably quickly, that the punishment wasn't as severe. But what we've sort of seen in the NRL is that that's sort of been irrelevant. If there's been any swinging arm or any sort of deliberate high contact, then, particularly in the last 12 to 18 months, then they have normally, ended up being a sin bin, or what they, call a yellow card in rugby. So that one was a little surprising, I must say.
Michael Ennis with us. Just harking back to Nathan, and he puts that little kick in at the end. You could see what he was trying to do. There's a gap there. He perhaps delayed it, but maybe a half a second too long, which is why he got caught. And then I just see the social media dickheads heaping on the guy. I mean, here is a guy who's man of the match and number two. He plays. Look, he's got marks all over his face. He plays. I just hate this kind of side to it. I don't know how much credence you actually pay or actually credit you give to it. I love the fact everyone's got an opinion, mate, but just sometimes just the overreaction. I mean, we've had it here with the All Blacks all week, and you just kind of think, look, that dude didn't go out there to do that deliberately. I mean, he's given absolutely everything. If the kick had come off, he'd be a genius, mate. We would have scored. He would have been a genius, right?
Yeah, and when Cooper Cronk and I both discussed the Ben play too, and while we're marvelling that, it was a all or nothing play from Ben Hunt as well. Where he came out. Now, if New South Wales get the ricochet off that kick back to Cleary, and he makes a break and score, all of a sudden it's a different story, But look, Nathan has been tremendous, and I thought last night in some of his defensive efforts, particularly under pressure, when there was so much fatigue through the middle of that game, that he was isolated so many times, and he was able to come up with some really big one-on-one tackles, in particular early in sets when guys like Corey Oates just put a radar on him and ran full steam at him. And his technique and his bravery to get in front was outstanding. I love Nathan Cleary as a player, and I thought he, that second half was really tough because, he wanted to put his stamp on the game, but Queensland, down to their credit, just didn't give New South Wales an opportunity to get out of their end and attack.
Yeah, the defence was
difficult for a halfback. Yeah, when your side's not going forward and you're stuck down your line, it's hard for a halfback to be able to inject himself and make a real impact with the footy. And I thought it was a wholehearted, committed performance from Cleary. He certainly did everything he possibly could. And the way of the world at the moment is that, people, with avenues of social media are able to express their opinions, and at those point in times, particularly after an Origin series decided like that, people's opinion and passion is at its highest.
Yeah, right.
And that's where, that's where you see those sort of comments come out. But as players, they're accustomed to knowing that and how to deal with that. And Nathan's shown that he's a highly mature kid, and it's it's just the way of the world, unfortunately.
Michael Ennis is with us on the platform. We're talking Origin last night, the decider. It was just a Queensland performance, wasn't it? DCE kicking off the second. When have you seen that in the game, in the last 10 years, mate? And then it was an obvious tactic just to get it down their end and trust our defence, and it worked in the end, but it's a brave thing to do in an Origin match with everything on it.
Yeah, it really was, and it was great execution because from the opening whistle, New South Wales in that second half, I beg your pardon, led 12-10, and you felt like New South Wales were probably the better side, even though Queensland picked up that try right on half-time to Capewell, and it was an inside ball to Kalen Ponga in the opening set where New South Wales were just too keen, chased out on Cherry Evans. He played back on the inside. Ponga went straight through, and that instantly gave them field position. And from that moment on, it was Cherry Evans and Hunt's kicking game that was just class. It really was. They completely suffocated New South Wales, didn't give them an inch to breathe, just kept putting the ball down into corners and landing it a metre off the line. And then we saw New South Wales come up with those, uncharacteristic pressure errors, that pressure was at its absolute highest. We saw Stephen Crichton with the offload into the in-goal. Jerome Luai with the lofted pass over the top. Talakai had some unhappy moments, one in the play the ball, another one where he got out of dummy half and was running across field, a metre from his own line. So, yeah, look, the kicking game and the smarts, particularly when both Gagai and Matt Burton were in the sin bin, and both sides were down to 12. They controlled that period so well, Queensland, and it was Cherry Evans and Benny Hunt that came up with some really experienced plays in that second half.
All right, finally then, look, New South Wales, we haven't won a series decider up there since 05. I know you played in 11 and 15. The atmosphere, just describe it to us. How hostile is it? How aware of it are you when you're out there? And how big does that crowd bring them home?
Oh, look, it's probably not until you retire that you actually, can look back on those, because they hurt so much when you get beat there, particularly there. There's nothing more. And my first Origin, whilst it wasn't a decider, was at Suncorp, and we were able to beat them there, and it was such a special feeling. But to go down in a decider and when the game starts to get away, it's like being in a sinkhole. The noise is just so captivating, and it just filters almost cyclonic around the place. Like it just swirls, and there's no way out. And they are so passionate up there, and it no doubt has an enormous impact on the side up there. And yeah, it's such a great place to play State of Origin. It really is. It's in a decider, you just feel the energy and the emotion just ripping through your body.